All these search reports, accompanied by a written opinion on patentability, should be issued within 6 months from filing at the EPO. For many applicants that come to us first, this still leaves them plenty of time to assess their options for filing elsewhere around the world with their priority year. See, the accuracy and usefulness of a search are closely linked to the completeness of the prior art. Our databases already contain over 90 million documents comprising patent publications from over 100 countries and non-patent literature in the form of academic papers, conference proceedings, and technical journals, among others. We also have access to third-party sources. Being aware of the sensitive relationship between patents and standards, we have invested extra effort in integrating standards documents in our collections, particularly in areas such as digital communications, because so many relevant disclosures about the state of the art now occur in standards discussions. Our examiners cited standards documents over 14,000 times in the year 2013, amounting to 35% of all prior art in some ICT fields. Given the tension between cost-effective industry-wide standards and proprietary rights, it is vital that patents that are essential for technologies adopted in standards and that might form part of a pool or be subject to fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory licensing be correct in their scope. Another key issue in relation to prior art is the explosion of Asian documentation, fueled by the exponential increase of filings, particularly in China and Korea, but also in India and other Asian countries. Our recent data acquisition channels have contributed over 31 million Japanese, Chinese, and Korean patent documents to our records, going back at least 3 decades. As far as India is concerned, I'm pleased to report that within the framework of bilateral cooperation, the EPO and IPO India have agreed to initiate a patent data exchange program that will provide much improved access to the patent information from both jurisdictions to the user community over the coming years. The first Indian patent data from 2015 have been loaded and are now available to the public anywhere in the world via the EPO's online applications, as BASNet and Global Patent Index. This is a real big success, and we are very thankful to IPO India. For the growing number of international applicants, the PCT is of great importance. The EPO is the most popular provider of PCT services, handling almost 40% of all PCT searches and acting as the international search authority on some 80,000 applications in 2014. One last topic I would just like to mention, but not to explain in detail, is the one closest to the heart of many Europeans, the so-called unitary patent and the unified patent court. The political deals were cut at the end of 2012, and the EPO is ready to issue the first unitary patent by the end of 2016 or beginning of 2017. The new system will complement rather than replace the existing routes to patent protection in Europe, offering a new tool for innovators. For my part, I can promise that the EPO will do everything in its power to make the new system work efficiently. It must be certain, timely, and cost-effective, not for our sake, but for the sake of our business. This is what I would like to contribute at the beginning of this conference, and I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Now I request Mr. Paul V. Jansen, Director, European Business Technology Center, to give the partner remarks. Before that, I would like to tell a few things about him. He is currently Director at European Business and Technology Center. As a Director, his main focus is on the SME and research communities and to execute the task of bringing EU and India closer together in their strategic and operational relations. This includes addressing challenges in transferring clean technologies, input for developing clusters, and creating platforms and channels to enhance collaboration on R&D and innovation. Welcome, sir.
But nonetheless, dear Mr. Lutz, dear Dr. Dutta, Mr. Nathan, Dr. Babu, dear participants and dignitaries, thank you for being here. I am especially pleased to be here, to be present, to take stock of the past year's work, the past year's achievements, and also to hear with such confidence how it's reported that this is going to continue for the next few years. New agreements are being signed, and specifically in terms with keeping business and research and innovation in the focus, and that's in the driver's seat of whatever we're doing together. I'm specifically happy about that because as the Director of European Business and Technology Center, we engage in enhancing trade, we engage in cross-border technology collaboration, which means technology transfer. It means technology scouting for Indian companies who are looking for technologies, looking for partners, looking for patents. And in that business, in that work, everyday work, what we face every day are actually a lot of questions, a lot of issues arising, a lot of challenges arising in making that collaboration happen. And a big chunk of those challenges are, in fact, in the space of intellectual property. It just goes to show how big a role intellectual property actually plays. If you're doing business research, which market should I enter into, who should I team up with, IP, which IP is already existing, you need the tools to search and look and get that insight. If you're talking about big programs in India, like the Make in India program, or Digital India program, and Modi travels around the world and saying we need foreign direct investment, we need people to invest here. People will only invest, companies will only invest if they can take informed decisions. And that is also a part of the whole ecosystem, so it's important to have that access to IP and understand what is the risk I'm taking in engaging in this activity. And then in technology collaboration, technology transfer, inadvertently, if you engage in innovation, if you engage in actual technology transfer, actual technology adaptation, you're creating new IP. So how do I manage that? Who am I doing this with? How do I share that IP? How do I manage it? How do I create an IP strategy? So all these questions pop up all the time. And everybody needs tools to deal with this. But a step back, everybody also needs to be aware that this is required. So that's what the programs in the past 2 years have been doing. So we've been indeed creating a lot of awareness of how important IP is, what you need to do to deal with it properly. We have been building capacity, training examiners, training others in the whole IP value chain to make this work, and building tools and platforms such as the collaboration, IPR collaboration tool that Mr. Lutz was talking about. So IP will continue to play such an important role. I think it'll only be more and more intense. And I reiterate that the efforts that we're doing is really driven by what are the needs of business and what are the needs of researchers to create innovation and create these collaborations happen. So therefore, at EBDC, we obviously welcome very, very much the new EPO India agreement, the new agreement between DATI and EPO, and a new 2-year plan to follow up on the past, I would term it, success. We heard about also the database, which is now being enhanced with Indian patents, the ISPASnet, which is indeed a tool that business use on a daily basis. So to be part of that going forward is extremely good for EBDC, and we look forward to play a big role in that. Apart from the collaboration platform, we've also been presented yesterday in a workshop, the Danish Patent Office, the marketplace, the IPR marketplace, which has interesting aspects in terms of really valuing IP and actually being able to sell and buy IP in a marketplace, which I think is a next step after having created a collaboration platform where people can gain insight and see what tools are generally available to them. So I think such platforms, such tools are imminent parts of an ecosystem of IPR and innovation, which we're going to discuss throughout the whole day today. So, and I'm happy to see that over the past 2 years and in the coming 2 years, EBDC is seen as a natural partner to make this happen, a natural partner on the ground to engage with IPR stakeholders to actually make this ecosystem alive, make it happen, make it work, make it valuable for all the IPR stakeholders. So we indeed look forward to the next phase to partner with you all for the next years. We look forward to feed you back what we hear from industry, what is important, what are the challenges, what are the issues, because I think that is important for you all to find agreements that are valuable going forward and to make this ecosystem a real tool and a real alive engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now I'd like to request Mr. G.S. Nathan, General Manager and Head Open Innovation, Wipro Limited, to deliver the keynote address. Before that, I would like to read out his profile. Mr. Nathan is responsible for driving innovation as a management discipline across the organization. He is responsible for internal and external innovation program and to drive IP creation and protection process. Over the last few years, he has been successful in thinking through, designing and implementing innovation interventions that has been made significant impact on Wipro innovation posture and IP portfolio. Welcome, sir.
Dr. Datta, Dr. Lutz, Mr. Jensen, and Dr. Babu, distinguished guests and members of the audience, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a great pleasure. It's with you today to talk to you. And I wish to thank the organizers of this excellent conference, the DT, European Patent Office, and other agencies in organizing such events. My perspective here is that of a practitioner, is a perspective from industry, and to that extent, the things that I talk about would be somewhat different from what I think many of the gentlemen in the dais talk about today. And I hope that is of interest and of use to you. But in case I am preaching to the choir, do pardon me. It is possibly one of the most interesting times for a software company, for an ICT company that we live in today. If you really look at how technology has been developing, I mean, you know, everybody is aware of the impact that technology is making on our daily lives today. Of all what economists call general purpose technologies, there have only been a few technologies that have had a huge impact on the world, a transformational impact. Technologies such as electricity, steam power, precision clocks, written language, money, metallurgy, agriculture, to name a few. There are a number of other general purpose technologies, but the ones that I mentioned are the ones that have had a major transformative impact. And of these, only 3, I would say, submit, are what we call soft technologies, which is written language, money, and the third big thing is software. Software is making a huge impact in terms that perhaps people are not realizing. There was a very influential paper written, I think, in the 1800s by a French economist called The Seen and the Unseen. What is seen in software is one part of it, but there is a huge transformation that is happening in the unseen part of it. As an example, today morning I came using an Uber taxi from Electronic City to here. Uber and Lyft and all the other applications like Ola and very many other things may seem to be a simple taxi hailing application, right? Something that makes the job of finding a taxi easier. But think about it in a little bit more way. Software is the piece that has enabled a whole lot of these kind of applications or these kind of innovations to happen. And while they do the job of actually, doing the service, right, getting me a taxi or getting anybody a cab, think about the kind of unseen effects that they're probably having. Tomorrow there could be a carless economy. When it becomes easier for people to travel and find a taxi whenever they want it, people use them. They don't use their own cars, and that is happening in Bangalore. There's tremendous traffic. I know a lot of people who use these cabs even though they have cars. And when you have a carless economy, then they are free to spend money on other things. The amount of money that gets spent goes into different directions, and there are a whole lot of other second-order impacts that ripples out into the economy. And that is what we might call as the unseen effects of software. Increasingly, software is creating these kind of effects, and I submit that it is one of the most transformational pieces of general purpose technologies, as I mentioned about, that we are going to see. There are other factors that are making this whole impact of technology and the fact that the innovation in ICT, especially in the sector that I belong to drive that sort of an innovation. There's globalization, and the fact that it is an increasingly flat world. The services model on which Wipro and companies such as ours, such as TCS, etc., I see Dr. Mohanty here, have all been successful, have been in a model whereby we are able to deliver services across the world, wherever it is required. And this is made possible by the huge development in technologies that allow us to do that. There is better information availability today. You can, and that is obvious to everybody. Today, students and practitioners, we all go to Google to see or Wikipedia to find information. First time we don't go and ask anybody. Everything is available in the smartphone. The GDP growth rates in India, the trade flows that are happening across different countries, these are all elements that drive the fact that yes, innovation is something that has to be done, and not only that, there is an element of protection to it. If you have to work in markets across the world, then your IP needs to be protected. You should not infringe on other people's IP. And so this general realization of all of these things is also driving a lot of creativity and innovation and even the recognition that IP is very, very important. And obviously, there are a lot of new monetization opportunities that are opening up. Dr. Datta referred to monetization of IP. That is one aspect of it. But there are a whole lot of new business processes and new capabilities that we can think of that can be done. So as a result of all of those things, ICT companies, and especially companies in my sector who are involved in software, are increasingly aware of IP and the importance of IP. As a case in point, in Wipro itself, till about maybe 5 years back or 6 years back, we weren't very keen or very cognizant of having to create IP and to protect them. We were doing the work that our customers were giving us. We felt that the IP belonged to them, and we used to basically transfer whatever work that we did, whatever IP that we developed, to our customers, and that was part of the contract. We were doing very well, and this was happening. There were, of course, certain leaders who recognized this earlier, but in Wipro, I think the cognition that this is really something that we should look at into more detail came perhaps about 5 years back. So in the chain of IP maturity, as I call it, there is this phase of IP creation, there is this phase of IP management, and then eventually that of monetization and having a very mature portfolio in which you operate. Many product companies are in that, perhaps in the third phase. Some of the services companies, I would say, I would acknowledge that TCS was possibly more advanced in this area. But as an industry, I think very many of the IT companies have realized, yes, that IP creation is very important. My focus over the last 3-4 years that I've been doing this particular role, been in this particular role in Wipro, has been in IP creation, has been in figuring out who would be the inventors. I've been to identify inventors, having been to encourage inventors to come up with ideas that can then be submitted as patent applications. So I think the critical pieces for this, from our experience, has been in terms of innovation management. How do you actually run innovation initiatives in the organization? How do you manage them? How do you create that energy within the organization? Building up the inventor community, identifying them, training them, motivating them. In terms of idea shaping, because not all ideas, so you get ideas of different maturity. You need to actually work on those ideas. There is very skilled facilitation that is involved in creating the final application that comes to you. So we have to do that, and we have to enable the processes that help in doing that. And obviously prioritization, given the very many different pressures and pulls that we have. So we have been working on all of those things. And I want to say additionally that, technology is moving so fast today. We are in an exponential curve as far as technology is concerned, and there is this very nice American saying, you ain't seen nothing yet. And this is something like that. What we have seen in the last 10 or 15 years is nothing compared to what we are going to see in the next 10 or 15 years in terms of the rate of change of technology, because we are traveling on that exponential curve. I think systems such as cognitive systems, machine learning algorithms, knowledge extraction, reasoning, context sensitive, context awareness, NLP, these kind of technologies are now intersecting and colliding at a tremendous pace to help us make sense of a whole lot of information and a whole lot of data that was just flowing by that we are not aware